Back in May 2017, I made my video, Cheating in Speedrunning, How Easy Is It? A Brief History and Assessment. To my knowledge, this was the first video to take much of a deep look into the topic of cheating in speedrunning. I looked at some of the historical cases of cheating, I looked at some of the different methods that had been used, and then, in order to answer the question of how easy it is, I made my own cheated speedrun of Spyro 2 Any%, using the cheating method known as splicing. This is when you edit different segments of gameplay together to create the illusion of one continuous run. Now, after I put out this video, I did get a fair amount of criticism from some people in the comments who said that I really didn't test the waters enough. You see, back when I made the cheated run in that video, I never actually tried to submit it to the speedrun.com leaderboards. And not only that, but the run was pretty far away from world record since I only had access to an emulator to play the game on at the time, which is far slower than some of the consoles. So in truth, that run never came under much scrutiny. Later on, there were some more videos on the topic, like Apollo Legends' 10 speedrunners who were caught cheating. Towards the end of this video, Apollo went a bit deeper than I did by submitting his own cheated run to the leaderboards, once again using the method of splicing. But still, his run was pretty far from the world record, and it wasn't live streamed or anything like that, so I still felt that the waters weren't fully tested. Then in March 2018, Lone Shark Joe released his video, My Obvious Fake Speedrun That Got Verified. Another great video. One cool thing about this video is that he used a different method of cheating than splicing, but the game he cheated on really wasn't very popular for speedrunning, and the run once again wasn't world record, so it really didn't come under that much scrutiny. I still felt there was more to test. So a few months ago, I set myself a challenge. A challenge to get 3 cheated runs, all of respectable times, verified on the speedrun.com leaderboards. I added some additional requirements to this challenge to make it more interesting than any of the previous videos on the topic. Here are the requirements. Number 1, all the cheated runs must be done on games that are at least moderately popular for speedrunning. Number 2, at least one of the cheated runs must be a world record. Number 3, at least one of the cheated runs must use a unique cheating method that has not been shown before in any of the previous videos on the topic. And number 4, at least one of the cheated runs must be shown on a live stream. Here's the profile of cheated runs that I ended up with on speedrun.com. I'm revealing for the first time publicly in this video that all of these runs are fake. And I'm going to show you how I went about doing it using both the classic method of splicing and a unique, highly effective method. I'll also show you how I went about live streaming a cheated run in an extremely deceptive way. Without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to start off talking about these 2 world record runs of Spyro 2 that I managed to fake, in the Any% and 14 Talisman categories. I'm going to try to not spend too long talking about these runs, since I think the Mario 64 run is quite a bit more interesting. That's the one that I live streamed and that I used a unique method for. But nevertheless, these cheated world records on Spyro are definitely still interesting, so let's take a look at them. There are 2 reasons that I decided to choose these speedrun categories to make fake world records for. The first reason is that I knew the runs would not be immediately disregarded by the community as obviously fake, because the community around the game knows that I do have a good level of legitimate skill, so it was fairly realistic to them that I may have gotten these records legitimately. But secondly, I knew that despite this, there would still be a lot of scrutiny directed at the runs, since neither of them were on a live stream, they were gotten so fast in quick succession, and they were both world records. And indeed, at least after this 14 Talisman run, I know that there were multiple people seriously considering the possibility that these runs were fake, and they were trying to find proof. This was very exciting to me because I was very curious to see if any proof was actually going to be found or not, especially considering that my previous Spyro 2 splice from my last video on the topic was never put under that much scrutiny. And as far as I was aware, these runs did not contain any of the telltale signs that have given other splices away in the past. The main method that has been used to detect splices in the past is inconsistencies in the mains hum background noise that commonly appears within a lot of console recording setups. But in my recording setup for the PSTV, which is the console that I use to play Spyro, no mains hum background noise is introduced that could be analysed, since the video signal is outputted from the console in HDMI and captured with a HDMI capture card. Despite the scrutiny that was directed at these runs, they ended up getting verified on the leaderboards, so I considered this part of the challenge complete and moved on. Well, for now at least. By the way, there will be links to both of these spliced runs in the description if you want to examine them for yourself. If you do find a way to detect the splices, then you may want to keep that knowledge to yourself or only tell certain people about it, because otherwise that knowledge could be used by future cheaters to avoid being caught. If you want to let me know about anything you find, you can contact me at my Discord, which will be in the description. So after this Spyro saga, I set my sights on the most popular game in speedrunning, Super Mario 64. When it came to cheating in this game, I knew that I had to set up some form of new and effective method in order to meet that requirement of mine. The technique of splicing is not so good in this game anyway, since almost all N64 recording setups will introduce mains hum, which was not an issue for Spyro as I mentioned earlier. It should also be mentioned that the Mario 64 leaderboards are split up by version. There's a separate leaderboard for the three main versions of the game, original N64, emulator and Wii Virtual Console. The original N64 leaderboard is by far the most competitive and respected, so I decided I was going to have to cheat on this platform. One of the first ideas for cheating that came to my head was to make use of the EverDrive 64 to cheat in some way. The EverDrive 64 is a flash cart for the N64. You can put any N64 ROM file onto an SD card that fits into the top of the EverDrive, and then run it on your N64 console. So theoretically, I could modify the game in some discrete way to give an advantage, and then run the modified version of the game on my N64 console via the EverDrive. This is not so hard to do for SM64, since there is quite a bit of documentation on how to mod the game already. I'm sure that there's potential in this method, but when I really thought about it, I couldn't actually think of any modification to the game that would really give that much of a practical advantage for speedrunning. That is when I started to consider another method, the method of tool-assisted speedrunning. If you don't know what a tool-assisted speedrun is, I recommend checking out Sonic Packer's video on the topic, that will be linked in the description. But to give a quick explanation, a tool-assisted speedrun is essentially a pre-programmed set of inputs that play the game from start to finish, which you can create on an emulator using various different tools like save states and frame advance. The vast majority of tool-assisted runs are clearly labelled as tool-assisted, so they don't try to deceive people in any way. However, it is also perfectly possible to create a tool-assisted run that looks like a legitimate human player. You can purposely add in mistakes to make the run look more legitimate, and tailor it to exactly how you want it. So if you create a tool-assisted run and do not clearly label it as tool-assisted, it's possible to try to pass it off as a normal human run. This is actually what Lone Shark Joe did in his video that I mentioned earlier. But the problem is that tool-assisted runs are made and run on emulators, and I knew that I wanted to cheat on the much more respected original N64 version. You might think that I could just play a tool-assisted run on an emulator and then try to pass it off as an original N64 run. That is what Lone Shark Joe did in his video, but he did it on an NES game rather than an N64 game. However, because N64 emulation is not that great, there are clear differences between emulator gameplay and original N64 gameplay. The SM64 moderators, who are much more thorough than the moderators for most other games, will definitely pick this up immediately. I was going to have to take this to the next level by getting specialised hardware to run my tool-assisted speedruns on an original N64 console. And that's exactly what I did. Take a look at this. This is a device fitted with a microcontroller that has male header pins which allow it to be connected to a variety of different game consoles. From there, it can be used to send pre-programmed inputs from a tool-assisted run made on an emulator directly to the real game console. Now, I certainly don't want to make this video into a tutorial on how to cheat, so I'm not going to tell you specific details on how you can get your hands on one of these or how exactly to set it up. But essentially, it just took some work with a crimping tool and an N64 controller cable to get this thing set up and ready to go. Also, I should point out that the creators of this hardware never intended for it to be used for cheating, but nevertheless, that is one of the possible uses for it, and in fact, it took a while for it to hit me just how powerful of a cheating method this is. Once you get used to creating tool-assisted runs on an emulator, you can keep creating more and more of them with great efficiency, and you can tailor them however you like. Once you play the run back on your N64 console using the special hardware, there is no chance of any form of strange artifacts in the audio or the video occurring like there is when splicing. I also found that it's pretty easy to switch between normal gameplay and a pre-made tool-assisted run at any point you like in the middle of a live stream. You can be doing some legitimate speedrun attempts, and then whenever you want to transition to a pre-made tool-assisted run, it is pretty easy to do so under the guise of a typical reset. Although once again, I'm not going to show you specifically how I went about doing this. So with all this setup in place, I was ready to go. But first, you might be thinking that this method does not meet my requirement of being unique, because it is very similar to what Lone Shark Joe did in his video. However, I think that the fact that I'm running my tool-assisted runs on a real console is enough to distinguish this method from what Lone Shark Joe did in his video. Maybe you disagree with that, but I'm going to say that this counts. Furthermore, let me make it clear that this method does not work so smoothly for many other games. You see, emulators for the N64 are not super accurate, at least right now, so there are pretty big differences between emulators and original consoles, most notably in the amount of lag. In the case of Mario 64, it is still possible to get tool-assisted runs that were made on an emulator to run on a real console, because of the way that Mario 64 checks for input coming from the controller. But other games check for controller input in a different way that is harder to emulate. Games like Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye 007, Perfect Dark, and many more do not sync up correctly because the emulation accuracy just isn't good enough. At least not yet, and probably not for many years, if ever. It just so happens that Mario 64 does work. So with that explained, now let's take a look at the cheated Mario 64 run I managed to live stream and get verified on the Speedrun.com leaderboards with the use of this method. I decided to target the 16-star category because it's relatively short, so it didn't take up too much of my time. I also knew that I could not go for the world record in this category because it is much harder to get world records in this game than in Spyro. And even though I am fairly good at Mario 64, the community knows that I am certainly not at the world record level, so it would be way too obvious. Therefore, I decided that my cheated run would be in the 16-minute range, which is still a respectable time and it still satisfies all of the requirements of my challenge. I ended up with this 16:42 run, which I streamed over on Twitch TV. I highlighted the full Twitch stream to archive it, and I'll leave a link to it in the description for you to check out for yourself. If you skip to around 22 minutes and 5 seconds in this Twitch stream, you can see that I finish a legitimate speedrun of the game in around 18 minutes. Then, a few seconds later, I reset the console to start a new run. This looks very innocent. It looks like I'm just starting a new run as per usual. In reality, in just that small period of time, I seamlessly transitioned from me playing the game normally to the game playing itself with my pre-made tool-assisted run. In fact, as soon as this run started, I didn't even stay at my console to keep watch over it. I went downstairs, made a brew, and returned towards the end of the run, when I saw this friend of mine in the chat who was certainly bamboozled, although I did fill him in on what was really going on shortly afterwards. By the way, I will also leave a download link for this run's Mupen64 input file in the description, in case you want to check it out for yourself for whatever reason. So, soon afterwards, this run got verified on the SM64 leaderboards, which was not a surprise to me because this was a convincing fake. And truly, I do not blame the moderators for this. I do not think they could have reasonably been expected to catch the cheating under these circumstances. Anyway, with this run verified, I had my challenge completed successfully. I had successfully cheated 3 runs, with at least one being a world record, at least one being done with a pretty unique method, and at least one being done on a live stream. Another cheating victory that truly demonstrates how it's perfectly possible to get away with it, and how any speedrunner could be cheating right under our noses, right? Well, not so fast. There is a final twist here. You see, after I got this last cheated run verified, and my challenge was complete, my plan was to edit this video together, then delete all of the runs from the leaderboards, and then upload this video as soon as possible afterwards. But during the period before I had finalised this video, and before I had deleted the runs from the leaderboards, there was still ongoing discussion in the Spyro community about the legitimacy of the 2 Spyro world records. Even in the absence of any hard proof being presented, the circumstances around the runs were sketchy enough that many people simply did not believe them to be legitimate anyway. And it seemed that many people wanted the runs to be removed despite not having hard proof against them. Then, on July 24th, 2019, which was around 2 weeks after the runs were originally verified, leaderboard moderator Newen came out with this statement. For everyone's information, we've removed Retro's runs. We've observed several instances of spliced points and have finally reached a reasonable degree of certainty that the runs are cheated. Thanks for the patience. After this, I sent Ewan a message to admit to him that the runs were spliced, and I came clean to him that I was in the process of making this video. I also sent him some documents to show that I'd been working on this video, including the script, so he got an idea of what the whole ordeal was about. And here is a concise version of the interesting conversation that followed after that. I asked him what proof he had that the runs were spliced. He said he wanted to keep that information secret. I said, fair enough, but if you are not willing to disclose what your proof is, then isn't it possible that you are either lying about having proof, or maybe the proof that you have may not actually be accurate? Now, it's important to reiterate that many people in the community seem to want the runs removed anyway, whether there was hard proof or not. So I thought that maybe Ewan was just lying about having proof as an excuse to get the runs removed. He doubled down that he was not lying about having proof, but he did concede the possibility that the proof he had might not actually be accurate, although he said he was reasonably confident in it being accurate. So I asked him, why don't you tell me some of the frames of the video that you have identified as splices? Then I can send you the Sony Vegas project file of the spliced runs, and we can verify whether splices actually occurred at those frames or not. This would allow us to verify if your method of detecting the splices is accurate or not, without you having to tell me what the method of detecting them actually is. But he denied to do this, saying that he had been told to not tell me any more information about it. This was strange to me because I felt that if he really did have proof that he was confident in, he would be happy to put that proof up to the test in this way. But nevertheless, he doubled down on this position and would not give any information that could verify whether his proof was real or not. So in all honesty, I still don't know whether he does actually have legitimate proof of the runs being spliced or not. And it seems that he is at least not 100% confident either. But either way, whatever is true, it doesn't really matter for the take-home message of this video. The take-home message of this video is that it doesn't matter whether you splice together your footage absolutely perfectly or not. It doesn't matter if you have the most fancy cheating setup or not, like I have here for my N64. If you're trying to cheat, then at least at some point, shady circumstances will arise around your runs and around your general character, which will lead to your demise. When thinking about some of the highly successful names in speedrunning today, people like Cheese, ZFG, Jodenstone, Lunar Jump, and many more, I truly do not believe that any of these people are cheating or have cheated, even though it's technically possible that they could have. And that's because all of these people have a clear history of honesty and legitimacy, to an extent that simply could not be faked. But if you look back at cheaters who have been caught in the past, many of them did not have that sense of legitimacy around them that you would expect, even before the moment that they were caught. It is just a natural process for shady circumstances to appear around you as you try to cheat. And once again, that will eventually lead to your demise, regardless of whether you have a super advanced cheating setup or not. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and that is the take-home message about cheating that I have for this video. One more note before I end off. I would like to give an apology to the Spyro community and the Mario 64 community for the whole situation that I got them involved with here as I was making this video. I did especially feel bad when I had some people congratulating me on my runs that were actually fake, so sorry to everyone for that. Also, if Ewan's proof against my Spyro runs is actually real, then that knowledge could be used in the future to detect future cheaters. So that's an example of at least one thing gained out of this whole situation. And Ewan, if that proof is real, then I'd like to congratulate you on finding it, and I hope you at least had some fun when trying to crack the case. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting, and thank you very much for watching. This is your boy Retro, signing out.